All right, look at that. We finished a chapter. Okay, so this is called the Afterburn. So if you have a comment or question, you can come up to the mic here. We'll line some people up. Also, we've got live stream where Rob will take care of noting your comments or questions. Now, I do want to put a little bit of a preemptive out there, okay? Which I think we don't do enough of, to like set the table for these kind of things. By the way, this is what I'm going to say now also applies on Tuesday nights. I want us to primarily understand that these afterburns and also the Tuesday night midrash time is for discussing the things that were already discussed that day or that night. It's not for just general questions about anything. This is why we do the midrashes. Now we've even added the zone 1 so that we can have every month an opportunity for anything to be asked, okay? That's number 1. All right? So we want to make sure that that's clear. So what I taught today, and it has to do with this teaching, those are the comments and questions we're mostly looking for. That's number 1. Number 2, let's be careful that we're not falling in love with the microphone or the typing into the chat and needing everything to be posted, because we start to end up liking to hear our voice. Because a lot of times your comment could be the same comment anybody can make. We're looking for some profound things that others could benefit from, or questions that other people may also have. Not just, hey, this was just wonderful, I loved it, and this is why. I'm glad you loved it, and this is why. But at this point, we're starting to preemptively get ready for the fact that 2 or 3 years from now, we'll be double and triple the size we are now. And how would we ever get to all the actual questions and important comments that we do need to share? All right? Again, please don't take this wrong. I'm not picking on anybody in particular. It just can happen where that starts to go in that direction, okay? I'm hoping everybody could make a comment on how moved you were by what we read today. I'm hoping everybody was affected by it in a positive way. So all of you could take the microphone legitimately and have something to say, okay? But if you got something that's an insight that you think others might benefit from, that's the kind of comment I'm looking for. If you have a question that may benefit others as well as yourself, that's fine as well. So hopefully that's making sense, okay? Now, when it comes to halachic things, that's the walk, okay? We call the walking out of Torah halacha, or halachic things, okay? Holech in Hebrew means to walk. And so when it comes to those things, it's one thing to ask me the questions. I'm not saying that Rabbi Tom's not qualified or Billy's not qualified, but please allow them to answer just a very general, specific halachic things. If it's the nuances of the halachic issues, allow me to make those comments. So wait for me, and they're going to tell you, please let's wait for Rabbi to come, because they have to be answered very carefully so they don't confuse more than they help. Okay, and it's not a negative on them, but that's actually my job until I have more classes, which we're going to start doing starting next week, to help them do better in knowing how to handle those kind of things. Because I don't want them to say something that can be misinterpreted, even though they didn't say anything wrong, but if it's not packaged right, look, even when I say stuff, I know that there are people that still don't understand me correctly. But at least then it's on me instead of the other way around. So let's try to allow for that. And if it's something more personal and you maybe have a question or you don't necessarily agree, why don't you save that for private counseling instead of doing it in public? Because then you force, and please don't force us to embarrass you in public because you brought it up in public. Okay, so that correction. And hopefully that makes sense. I'm just trying to preemptively do this because I think I've allowed it to get a little bit where it's beginning to get a little out of hand, and I want to rein it in just a little bit, okay? I don't want to intimidate you from making your comments. I'm just trying to say, we have an hour to cover as much as we can on both live stream and here. You got over 500 people or computers logged on there, almost 200 people here. That's a lot, all right? So let's try to work that through. Okay, let's begin with, who's here first, Olivier?
Hi. Not sure if you're going to be profound enough, but...
No, listen, it's not about that. Just keep the mic up by your mouth.
All right. First, a comment when you talked about the metaphor of the road going to the kingdom, on having, things on the left and on the right that we should not be doing. Or what I thought about talking about the road is, if you're driving a car, you're driving on the road and you look somewhere, you have a tendency to go where your eyes are looking. So that's dangerous.
Yep.
So to me, on this road to the kingdom, we have to be careful on what's on the left and on the right, not to look at them, because if we do look at them, we may have a tendency to go there as well. So
Awesome. See, that's what I'm looking for. Comments like that are fantastic. Okay?
Another comment is in James. So we saw in chapter 1 that he talks about doing the works. And it's not just only chapter 1, it's the entire book of James, where he's going over and over saying, you have to do the works. The works bring, life. And not doing the works is death. When I read it, and I just don't understand how you can read anything different from that, main Christianity, or where they said you don't have to do the works anymore, because that's so clear to me here. So I'm just puzzled by that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and he's going to even hit it harder by the time we get to the end of chapter 2. So,
On the last comment, actually a question, you talked about venting on venting sessions with friends. Or I think a few weeks ago we talked about complaining on how we shall not complain. Could you clarify venting versus complaining?
Yeah, I mean, look, complaining has the idea that you're expecting or wanting something to happen. Okay? Venting is, I know nothing is going to happen, I'm just letting off steam. Okay, a complaint is saying, this is not right, I don't like it, someone needs to fix it. Complaining is that kind of level. All right? Venting is, I reached my limit, I just got to pop some steam out, and then we can move on. I'm not expecting anything to change. I'm not even asking for anything to change. You see, that's where the difference is. Complaining has a motivator in it. I want something to change. I don't like what's happening, so I'm complaining about it with the hope that somebody will fix it. When you're venting, I don't expect anything to get fixed or changed. I just need to let off some steam. Does that make sense? Okay? All right. Ashley?
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
On the, I don't know how to say the word, but the thing of the tongue, like be careful what you say.
Lashon hara, which is evil speak, right?
With that and venting, is it even wrong? Like a lot of times I won't post much on Facebook anymore, but I will go write it and then I'll delete it, try to keep it in the same as venting. Isn't it wrong to even think that and type it out?
Look, if you need to get something out because it's an emotional thing that needs to get out, I wouldn't type it in a place where if you accidentally hit send, it goes to Facebook. I would just type it on a Word doc or something, or just write it out on paper, because sometimes you just want to get it done and then just throw it out. Okay, or if it's on your screen, just erase it, delete it, whatever. But you got it out of your system, so you got it done, and just get it out. But if you are going to vent with anybody, the whole point is that you're letting them know, look, I just need to vent. Don't take this in any way. I'm not looking for anything to be fixed. I just need to vent. All right.
Okay. And my second question is about people watching what you do before you make a reaction. How would you go about raising children in that mindset?
Say it again, which mindset?
Like, how would you like to think about what you say before you do and what you do before you say with young children? And
all right, it's something that you can plant seeds when they're very young, but very hard for them to embrace it till they start getting in that transitional weird space of teenager to adult, because they have to be able to intellectually process what you're saying. And when they're very young, they can't. I mean, you can plant seeds where you're telling them, hey, it's important to think, to process before you speak. That's very hard for them to do until they're old enough to understand what that is and why it's important, okay? And once they've said things that got themselves in trouble, they start to realize, wait a minute, I need to fix that somehow. And then you tell them, remember what I told you about slowing down? That will fix that problem. And so that doesn't work so well in younger children, but do plant those seeds as best you can, okay? And then one last thing about the venting, never vent in public, okay? Venting should be done privately in a very secure and limited space, okay? All right, go ahead.
so it'll be normal for specifically Agnes and Constantine, it's normal for them just to go like one ear out the other with.
Oh yeah, no, they're not going to be able to follow this. They're too young. Okay? I'm not saying don't say it to them, but they're not going to be able to process that.
Okay.
Okay? Certain things in our life we don't process until we can't do until we're old enough to be able to think through and process. And at 5 or 6 or 4 or 5, whatever, even up to 10 or 12 sometimes, it's really hard for us to process because we don't have enough experience in life and development to understand the consequences of actions. Which is why a child does something, you punish the child, they do immediately the same thing again. If they're still not connecting that there's a consequence was connected to the action. It takes years to develop that ability to connect those dots. So we keep planting the seeds, though, so that when they get older, they go, oh, that's what Mom was talking about. Okay? Steve?
Okay, to see if I got this right. Enduring approving is what I think you said. So to me, I think sometimes we think ourselves have proved ourselves by the amount of time that we've been in the trial or the length of it, and yet we don't realize that it's the Father who decides if we've proved ourselves through the enduring portion, correct?
Okay, so good question. There's 2 parts to this. The proving that you're learning, in other words, you're proving to yourself that you can get through something that you didn't think you could or whatever it was that you needed to learn. And then, of course, there's the proving to Him, your effort to put Him first and to learn what needs to be learned and to struggle through the trial. So there's 2 aspects of it. One is Him watching you and you're proving and demonstrating to Him. The other is you're demonstrating to yourself. And you may be like, I didn't think I could get through that. And you do. And you're like, awesome. I've grown. And you feel excited about the growth that's there. And so it has both aspects.
Okay, and then you mentioned about emotions setting our desires. So sometimes I think we want to label our desires that it's the Father's will, and we'll take that and justify what we're doing as a driver rather than really looking at it was our emotions.
True. All right, we have to understand that desire can be birthed from any of 2 sources. I won't say the third source, Hasatan. Hasatan's feeding off of the first source, which is you. Elohim can still birth a desire. When He popped your bubble and you started asking, seeking, and knocking, He birthed that desire. He gave you an itch you needed to scratch. But a lot of the desires you have are birthed in you. The me, I preference stuff. Now, Hasatan gets involved because he's encouraging you to do the stuff that's your desire that doesn't match Elohim's desire. And that's where Hasatan comes in. But the desire can be birthed from one of 2 places. Either Elohim births it or you birth it. Most start off with you, okay? And then the process transitions over time to where you're now aligning to His desire. But you remember it says in Scripture that we are to seek what is His desire. What is it that Elohim wants? What's His perfect will? What does He want? What does He desire of us? And then we align our desires with His. Go ahead.
All right, and then lastly, you talked just at the end about how we treat those in need, but I think sometimes we ourselves have expectations and conditions on whom or what we're willing to do. And I know there should be guidelines, so how do we align those things to be reasonable? Because maybe one guideline or expectation I would have for one person wouldn't be reasonable, that might be for another.
All right, so, first of all, most of the things you're asking are handled with guidance or counsel, okay? Now, when you're talking about how you would have as far as guidelines or expectations of somebody else, let's be careful that you should have none unless the somebody else is somebody you have responsibility for. You should have no expectations in terms of setting up guidelines for other people. You got enough trouble dealing with yourself. Now, for your children, you're responsible until they're adults. Some of you have a real hard time recognizing that your 35-year-old son or daughter is not your problem anymore. I mean, you come and you call them and you counsel and you're having all these meltdowns over what they're doing. It's okay to have a heart that feels for them, but recognize they have to adult. And if they're bad at it, then they'll learn from their experiences, hopefully. But if you keep flying in there and trying to be the helicopter mom to a 35-year-old or a 40-year-old, you're not helping. You think you are, but you're not. They need to go through whatever they're going through so they can learn how to deal with things themselves. So when you're talking about approaching people differently, Steve, yes, you have to approach each person individually. How I approach my son is different than how I approach my daughter. Not just because one's a son and one's a daughter. Even if they were both of the same, if they were both sons or both daughters, they're two different people. And so they're going to respond differently. They're going to react differently. Things will work with one that might not work with the other as far as the different approaches I might take. So my expectations are based on knowing them, as far as how they will react or what will work with them or not. I have to learn them. Maybe that's probably one of the most important things I can tell you guys right now. In every relationship, including the vertical one, you must learn them. You have to learn the father. You have to learn the son. What are they about? What do they expect? What works with them? What doesn't work with them? If you're married, you have to learn your spouse. You have children, you have to learn your children. I watch people all the time frustrated when their children don't behave like they think they behaved. By the way, keyword, they think they behaved when they were kids. Oh, when I was a kid, you don't remember. You've skewed that into some fantasy, okay? Now, some of you actually made it worse, but some of you think that, oh, I was the perfect kid and I never did these things with my children. Listen, okay? Learn your children, they're not you. Yes, they do certain things and people say, oh, just like your dad, just like your mom. But generally, except for those small things that remind everyone that they're your child, you have to learn them. Learn what works and what doesn't work. Learn what struggles they have. Every one of you, including your children, is psycho-emotionally screwed up on some way. Figure out what your child's is so that you can adapt to it and work with it. Figure out what yours is so you can realize why you struggle in working with somebody else. All of us need to just go out there and get diagnosed in some way. Take the test to find out what your stuff is. I'm not kidding. It's enough that you figured out your color code stuff, but that's only this little piece of the puzzle. But we all struggle with different things. Look, I didn't put it out there during prayer time, but I've been having tremendous ADD problems more than usual over the last year. I don't know why, but my ability to focus or need something to distract me so I can focus has gotten much worse of late, and it's hard. And I'm very blessed that my wife has noticed in an empathetic and sympathetic way. And because when I explained, she's like, why do you need to be fidgeting with this or that? I said, I need to, that's why. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I'm struggling. And she said, oh, okay. I mean, she's actually understanding that I'm struggling with things. You know, people sit with me and I'm just fidgeting on my phone so I can focus. And they've come to accept that that's something I need to do. I don't know why, but I'm open to other suggestions. But you start to own and learn yourself, okay? And so it's not easy to deal with your handicaps. Realize everybody you're dealing with is also handicapped. Maybe undiagnosed, but we're all handicapped by life, by how we were raised and all of our experiences and how you were born and whatever other thing. We're all dealing with some sort of level of handicap. And it requires a lot of patience to deal with handicapped people. And you expect people to deal with you, but do you deal with them with the same level of patience you expect them to deal with you? It's not easy. So hopefully that kind of answers that and fits in to that. I mean, we have to learn each child. I mean, I think the success I have with my children, to whatever degree I have, is because I've made an incredible amount of time and effort in trying to understand them, okay? Not understand them like through my filters, but actually understand really what and who they are. Unfiltered, so that I can then use that information so I can help them and guide them. But that's hard to do that. You have to be very willing to accept the other person is who they are. A lot of marriages could get a lot better if you could do that with your spouse. Accept them as they are. Stop needing them to be different. You picked them. I always say that, but You picked them. They're yours. Stop getting frustrated with them being what they are. Oh, but you expected is nothing. That you married them, stop expecting. They are what they are. If they improve, great. If they don't, they're still what, this is your life that you chose to be with someone, and you need to grow in how you handle that person's handicap. There's a lot of issues. I'm not saying all marriages will be fixed by that, but it'll fix some of them. If you would just accept that you're dealing with someone who has issues, and it's okay, and it's not your job to fix them. That's the big part. It's not your job to fix their issues. You can encourage them to work on their own, but you need to be patient and respect that. Okay, let's go to live stream for a couple, then we'll come to you.
Okay, from AH says, if we are, quote unquote, loving our neighbor as ourselves, how can I tell if someone is being sincere or fake?
I'm trying to decide if I want to just say that it doesn't matter, okay? Because unless it's like a husband-wife or some sort of deep, close relationship, figuring out if someone's being real or fake is probably not that important. If you're paying attention, you should figure it out over time. But it's not a big thing that you should be always wondering. I try to accept people as real without any evidence otherwise. In other words, without having substantial evidence otherwise, I take people as real, and I take them as what I see is what I get. And what they say is what they say. Because I can't react to anything but what I'm receiving unless I have a good reason to believe that what I'm receiving is not the truth. It's a show. It's phony in some way. And by the way, if you're paying attention, the evidence will be there at some point that you're not getting a real response, you're getting a manufactured response. They're producing something for your entertainment value, or just to avoid a problem, or just to put on a show, or whatever it is, okay? In other words, there's an agenda. Now, the agenda may not be a bad one. They maybe think that I'll behave a certain way, even though it's fake, just to maintain peace. So it's not a terrible agenda. What I'm just saying is they'll have an agenda. People who are being real are just being real. There's no agenda there. They're just being themselves, which is part of why people don't like me and other people love me, is because I try to be real all the time. Okay? And that works for some, it doesn't work for others, okay? But I try to be real. And that real can have its, with all the warts and blemishes and everything else, but it's real. I don't try to be polished and worry about all of that stuff, whether I'm in front of the mic or not. You just pretty much get me the same wherever I am, okay? So just keep that in mind. Okay, next.
Okay, from Anna Uden. Says, is it inappropriate to tell someone to bridle their tongue? Not between husband and wife, but sister, mother, etc., especially if they're constantly negative or have no filter.
Okay. There's a right way to do this and a wrong way to do this. It is not appropriate for you to tell another adult what they need to do with their speech. It is appropriate for you to say, I would rather not be in a conversation like that. And so, in other words, if someone is just, all they spew is negative, I wouldn't tell them they need to worry about bridling their tongue and worried about all of how it's affecting them. I would just simply say, if that's what you want to talk about, I really would rather not. Can we talk about something else? Okay? Or if they unrelentingly want to do these things, you can say, look, if that's all you're going to do, I'm not going to talk to you until I just don't want to, that's not what I want to be doing. I'm not going to tell them they need to bridle their tongue or anything in any other way that basically makes that point. All right? I'm going to instead tell them how much I do or do not want to interact with it. So it has more to do with the relationship thing than with bridling the tongue, okay?
Okay, from AH, how can I get past the emotional scars in order to, quote unquote, adult and make better choices?
All right, so essentially you're going to need to recognize that the reason you struggle emotionally is because you have not reconciled and released past events, past experiences. So you have too much past in your present. That's your problem, okay? And so focusing much more of your attention on the present, on the now, will fix most of that problem. Does that make sense? Okay? There is only now, but you remember the past, and so it filters in. You're thinking about the future, so that filters in. Well, the past is already in the past, and the future hasn't happened, so those things don't even really exist. What exists is now. And the more you focus on the past, the more we have depression and on these negative emotional states. The more you focus on the future in a negative way, the more you have anxiety and fears and those kind of things. The more you focus on right now doesn't have anything to do with either one of those necessarily. You can just immerse yourself in that moment. You're talking to somebody, just focus on them. Don't worry about what you have to do later when you get home or when the next day at work or what happened yesterday or on your way to whatever. Just be there, present. And that will fix most of that. But you probably need some counseling, and if it's an ongoing anxiety or challenge with the past, you probably need somebody professionally to help you walk through reconciling and processing to fully processing. Because most of you partially processed, which is how you got through the negative events. But if you haven't fully processed, it's still living and breathing in your present on some level, okay? And so don't be afraid to get professional help. I know there used to be some idea, maybe there still is for some people, the stigma, the idea of needing to go get some psychological, counseling or help. You could either try to get help or you can just be okay with having your problem. I mean, it's one of those choices. You can, if you have a bad hip, you could try to deal with that forever, or you can go maybe find out about getting a hip replacement. You understand what I'm saying? You could either do something or not. It's a matter of how much is it adversely affecting your quality of life. And so if your problems emotionally with the things that have happened in your past are really having a strong effect on your quality of life, you probably need to go and address it.
Okay, from Stephen Wood, is it okay to publicly denounce blatantly wicked behavior?
No. Okay? Bear in mind that the only time anything should be done in public is if it's a response that's being forced because of what was done in public. And it has to be absolutely 100% directed at you. And even then, you don't have to. People put public things out there about me all the time and I don't respond. Okay? But like, for example, if somebody were to do something in this midrashic sort of interactive live thing, I may have to address something publicly because they threw it out there in public. And so it's just hanging there, needs to be addressed. But very few things require that. That's only because it would be here in a live setting where people are needing me to respond because somebody did something or said something that needs a response. But if it's something posted somewhere on Facebook or some other social media thing, it doesn't really necessarily need a response. Now, if they post it on one of our group pages and somehow it gets in there, then maybe I need to respond. Usually if it's something that really is of that type of nature, I just delete the comment and just put it out of there. Look, there are people out there that think, oh, this ministry is afraid of anybody disagreeing with them, so they shut the comments off on their teaching videos. No, I just don't think all of you who have nothing better to do than spew vomit need a platform to do it. Okay? And for the few people that are going to say, oh, thank you, it was wonderful, I don't need that either. I mean, I don't need that. I'm glad you feel that way. But so we just shut the comments off just to make it less distracting for people just to get in there battling each other, basically, they're playing King of the Hill or something emotionally. And so they're climbing up and knocking everybody down and trying to, over what? Because you got to see the comments we get that we don't post, okay? On the videos, and they're incredible. And they're really incredible. And so, we had one person at one point, on every video, post the same negative comment. I know they hadn't listened to the video, and it had nothing to do with the video itself, but it was just something about me or whatever. And I'm thinking, there's like 600 videos. Why would you have time to go on every video to make this dumb comment? knowing full well that I never approved them to post anyway. I mean, I watch a lot of stuff that I don't like, and at the point that I don't like it, you know what I do? I turn it off and watch something else. I never give a thumbs down, and I never make a comment. Never. Okay? Now, with the same token, even if I like it, I almost never give a thumbs up. I just watch it, like it, or don't like it, and I go and watch something else. I don't get that involved and don't feel the need to. But when there's public, awful things happening, unless it's your job to address it, if you're a public figure and you need to publicly address it, but then you have the appropriate platforms to address something publicly. You know, if you're a government official, you may have a platform to address something that's going on that needs to be addressed. But generally speaking, it's not your job to address, even if it's truly, inappropriate behaviors, unless it's actually your relationship appropriate. Unless you have an appropriate relationship to address it. And even then, you should address it privately, not publicly. I can't tell you how many times there's things going on in Facebook and other groups where, and even on the Marco Polos, where people are addressing things that either have to do with my wife and her programs or me and my programs that we're doing, that somebody has an issue with or confusion about, and they're doing it out in public instead of contacting one of us to get clarification. Privately. Well, I don't understand why, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you didn't understand, why don't you ask one of the people that can answer your question instead of venting out there in public? And then maybe once you understand, you realize, oh, it's okay. I didn't need to be upset about it. This is our problem, is that let's address the reality. We're going to have a reality moment. You, point at the camera, you, all of you, have an emotional need for people to see everything the way you do. So if you see another person as wrong, doing something wrong, inappropriate, whatever it is, it's not enough that you think that. You need validation by having other people feel the same way. So you're going to go around looking to see if other people will agree with you that that person is doing this awful thing that you think is so awful. Do you see what I'm talking about? Because somehow we need, as part of our validation, we feel we need others to agree and see things. That's why I tell people all the time, and I get upset when they start going in certain directions about people, and they go, why do you get so upset? I said, because I'm not upset, but I want you to stop. Because you want me to feel about that person the way you do. You're not just sharing, oh no, I just wanted you to know. No, you didn't, okay? Because your tone of voice and what you said is not just sharing information. Hey, by the way, did you know this is going on? No, can you believe so-and-so was, see, as soon as you sound like that, you already are having a desire for me to go, no, wow, I can't believe it either. That's what you want me to do. Can you believe so-and-so did this? And you want me to respond, no, wow, that's terrible. Instead of just saying, by the way, you may not be aware, but so-and-so is doing this thing, do whatever you want with it, but this is going on, and I thought you should know, okay? See, some of you think you're sharing information. No, you're out there evangelizing an idea. You're wanting others to feed into and agree with you and see that person or situation the way you do. That's a maturity problem that needs to be fixed. An immaturity problem needs to be fixed. A lack of maturity. You shouldn't need anybody to see what you're seeing the way you do. By the way, you do that from the positive side too. You get upset with your friends who don't see Torah, your family members who don't see Torah, because you need them to see it because you see it. That's a want, not a need. You got to stop that. De-escalate it to a want. It's nothing wrong with wanting others to see things the way you do. But once you need it, your behavior becomes a problem. Because now you're going to interact with people trying to force the situation. Does that make sense? We all get that now? All right? Own that. Please own that. Think about every time that you said, oh, well, I was just trying to help and share information. No, you weren't. Think about what you said and how you said it. Ask the question, was there a desire on your part for that person to see the situation the way you do? Was that really what you were hoping would happen? Because I frustrate a lot of people when I don't react the way they want me to. Because they'll share something with me, like, okay. They're like, what do you mean okay? That's horrible. Aren't you going to make them? Because they wanted me to get upset like they were. And when I don't, they get frustrated. Why aren't you upset about it? Because it's none of my business, it's none of your business, and it's not our problem. But we have boundary issues. We don't understand what is not our business. That's where some of these questions are coming from. I appreciate that you're asking, so I'm not picking on you. But a lot of the questions are people trying to figure out where the boundaries are, or figure out why there are boundaries because they feel like there shouldn't be. That's the problem with social media. We lost all our boundaries. Because that invisible typing, even though the person may know you, but because they're not looking at you face to face, all of a sudden we're all brave and full of bravado and we're just, say whatever we want and we're all in everybody's face. Really? Because I'll tell you what, almost none of the people that do that about me would even think to come do that face to face. I'm not saying that like they wouldn't think like I'm cocky or something. I'm saying they just wouldn't. They're all strong. Ask Billy how many people are all strong talking to him, and then when he says, well, go talk to Rabbi, and they're like, nope. Because you like the buffer to give you courage, to be all blustery and blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, Billy, blase blah. So, don't say anything that you wouldn't say to the person face to face. How's that for at least a beginning guideline? If you're not willing to say it face to face, don't say it. And if you're willing to say it face to face, that's the only place you should say it, is face to face. All right? All right. Over here, we'll go to Shannon.
My question was more about handling negative emotions, like you have something going on upstairs, and so you talk about how you should have like a friendship circle to be able to vent it out, to let it out and release it.
I'd rather it be individual, not circle. Just one person.
Just one person.
Yeah, let's keep it one person.
Yeah. So, let's see, how do I ask this question? What about for instance, I'm a white. I prefer holding things in, and I always feel like I can't share it with people because I feel like I'm just going to be a burden onto them. And I like how you said that we're like a ticking time bomb. I feel like I'm ticking all the time, tick, I'm like about ready to burst. I'm afraid I'm gonna say something wrath if I burst. So it's like it's a weird I get.
Okay, so wait, hold on. So scripturally, we are told to bear each other's burdens. So don't worry about being a burden. It's actually part of what we're supposed to do. Okay? So you're giving someone an opportunity when you share to do that scriptural instruction, to bear with you with your burden. So don't worry about being a burden. If you're not a burden to anybody, then you're not giving them an opportunity to bear your burden with you. Okay? So allow them to share with that. And at some point, the only time that people end up being a burden is when they are refusing to own anything and handle their own stuff, and they just always are seeking other people for everything. And that's when somebody needs to say, hey, listen, you need to do this yourself. I appreciate that you came to me, but you need to do this yourself. And then have somebody push it back over, transfer it back to you. But as far as sharing information, you need to be able to, have a release valve for all of that pressure that builds up. And so, and again, it's not that you need only one person. I mean, if that person's not available, maybe have a second choice, but don't go to both of them, just go to one. And if you're just trying to vent, and don't get the mileage out of it by venting to everybody you know and all your whole circle of friends, and next thing you've had 5 hours of conversations with 4 different people, venting. That's not, venting shouldn't take more than 10, 15 minutes at the most, and just get it out of your system to one person and move on. It's supposed to be a release, okay? Which means that once you release it, it's gone. All right, go ahead.
Because that also fell in line with the other question I have. It's like, because like you hold those emotions in, because like with me, when I know when I hold it in, and then suddenly I burst out in little temper tantrums, but not on people, but on more like on inanimate objects. That's kind of me as a wife.
That's fine.
I just wonder, is that healthy? Because sometimes I wonder.
No, look, listen, you have to release negative emotions somehow, okay? And you can develop different techniques to do it. Look, this is a really good, motivator for physical exercise, because it has a very positive effect on the chemistry in your brain, but also in releasing a lot of negative, because you're physically getting that out. Look, if you feel like you need to get certain things out, then get yourself a punching bag and hit the bag. I mean, it's a great exercise, and you have something you can hit. All right? Okay, and there's nothing wrong with getting something that could physically get that. If you go to the gym and you're pushing the weights and you all get that anger out of you, use it and you're pumping the iron or whatever you're doing. But get it out of your system, in whatever way you need to. Look, if you need to go out somewhere and just yell or scream where you're out by yourself and nobody's going to hear you, just get it out. You can't hold these things in, or you will explode. And then that won't be good for anybody. So you have to have some means to let the steam out, okay? But it has to be appropriate. And there's nothing wrong with finding things that you can have. Look, I was a martial artist. I had a karate school. I was a sensei the whole 9 yards back in the 80s. And I used to keep in my house some of the breaking boards, which actually now they make them so that they're made out of plastic so you can break them and put them back together and you can keep using them. But I used to have a bunch of pine, the white pine breaking boards, that if I ever got to the point where I really needed to let off steam, I'd take the boards out, pop a few of them, and I felt much better. Because I was able to release whatever needed to be, And of course, now that was when I was in my 20s, and so I found more productive ways to handle it than that, but at least there was a way to get stuff out of the system, okay? In a way that doesn't hurt anybody or anything, because holding it in, unless you figure out how to process it and release it internally, isn't going to work really well. You have to release it. Now, as you get older, you should be able to do it without needing to hit anything, without needing to physically do anything. You should be able to release it by having the thought process dominate and get the emotions to release. But that takes time to develop. And sometimes you need to have something short-term and quick so that you can at least take the edge off and, hey, go run. Some people do a lot of that with running. Maybe go out there and run around the block a little bit or something. Just something to physically get some of that out. All right, go ahead.
Yes. What about like you're at work and like you really feel like you need to take it out on something, but of course you can't do it. There's people around because that might make you look bad. Because I've had those moments where I just want to teach one of the machines at work a little lesson. It's like work. But I'm just wondering, how do you deal with that?
Okay. Well, first of all, you recognize that generally speaking, except with like vending machines, hitting them doesn't do anything. I don't know why vending machines tends to work. You smack it, the thing finally comes out or whatever. But generally with big, factory machines, that's not going to do anything. But, one of the things that could work, and I learned this through a multi-level marketing company many years ago when dealing with, frustration and things that, don't go right in your week, but you don't want it to distract you from moving forward. So one of the guys came up with the idea of, he picked a time and a day that would be, nothing else would be going on. He said, okay, Sunday, 3 o'clock, that's when I'm going to deal with all this stuff. So whenever something horribly frustrating would happen, he'd write it down, okay, I'm going to deal with this Sunday, 3 o'clock. I'm going to go and have all my other things going on. I'm not going to think about it because, man, I'm going to just deal with it and vent it out on Sunday, 3 o'clock. And so, of course, by the time he got to Sunday, 3 o'clock, all these other wonderful things happened because he didn't get distracted and then realized, wait a minute, that wasn't so bad and wasn't such a problem and he wasn't mad about it anymore. So you may want to take something like when it's at work and just note down for yourself, okay, I'll deal with this on this day at this time. Right now, I'm just going to finish my job and not worry about it. Okay? I'm already planning, so the brain needs to know you're going to deal with it. I'm going to let it out and scream and punch a bag or whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to do it on that day, and it's in the future, and now you can let it go because it's going to be dealt with.
So just like write it out pretty much?
Yeah, just write out. Machine's not working. Boy, I'm going to have a good yell about this on Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Whatever works for you. Whatever your shift is, when you have that time. And of course, when you get there, you can sit back and go, well, actually, things ended up working and it wasn't so bad and I'm calm now and whatever. But at least you got it out and you were planning for it. And if you're still upset about it, you'll be able to vent it out then. Okay?
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Okay? Awesome.
I hope you don't mind me coming up to the mic a second time.
That's okay.
I was sitting over there and actually behind there, and you were talking about how you want to learn your son and your daughter and your husband and all that. One thing
I don't want to learn my husband, no.
Well, my husband, that one.
You want to learn your husband? Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
See, when you teach, I think about the things you're saying and I internalize it. So,
Okay.
But the one thing I realized that I've been doing this whole time since I met you in Sukkot is learning about myself. And I think, if I may, and correct me if I'm wrong, then that's probably the most important thing, because if I can't learn about myself, then how am I going to learn about my children? Because there's an interaction there, so you have to not only learn about them, but learn about you.
Okay, excellent. Now, let me just repackage that to the way I want you to look at it. I don't want it to be about that you have to actually understand yourself to be able to understand other people. But when you learn and understand yourself and realize how challenged you are and why you struggle and where you struggle, you realize other people do too. You understand? So it's not just that you have to understand why you struggle and everything else, but understand that, hey, I struggle with things. Other people struggle with these same things. And there's other things they struggle with that I don't, and things I don't that they do, and whatever. But you start to recognize. So like when we did the color code personality thing, you started to realize, oh, each personality style has strengths and weaknesses. And then you started to recognize why you struggled because of the weaknesses of certain colors you have. And then you realize, wait, maybe that's why other people are struggling. Okay? Now, I don't have any blue, but I can recognize that the ones who do struggle with those blue negative traits when there's that. But I have all this red. I understand where the red struggle comes from. But the more you study and learn about these things, you can realize, wow, everybody has, as Shannon came up, was talking about certain white struggles, right? The personality that tends to want to avoid conflict and have peace, but they keep everything inside and then go boom, all right? And so the more you can understand yourself, the more you realize, wow, everybody else is like me. They just have similar and different struggles, but they all have struggles. We're all handicapped. We all have strengths, and we all do well at certain things. And we're this mixed thing, and the more you understand that and realize everybody's that, then we have more of an appreciation of how we handle the people that are out there. Okay? Did that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And then if I may make a comment to that, when I came here, I'm still very messed up. But when I came here, I was a lot more probably messed up than I am now. And standing here and listening to you teach today, I realized that, and I didn't realize I was doing it until today. I want all these people in my life to change. My mom, my husband, my kids, and this. If they can't change, there's only one other flex point that I can make change. That's me.
There you go.
So
that was a distinction that was important about the process, is realizing the only one that you actually can have a real consistent effect on. And the reason I say consistent, because it's not that you can't have an effect on somebody else, but the only one you can really have a real consistent effect on is you. Okay? And so the more you need people to change, the more your life will be absolutely a nightmare.
yeah.
Okay? There's nothing wrong with wanting people to change, I get that, but the stronger that desire is, and the more the frustration level increases, the more you're going to be miserable all the time. Because people are not going to adjust to you as much as you can adjust to them. Okay? All right, awesome.
And then one last thing is, just to reiterate home, how I know you're my anointed and appointed. I was standing back there and you're talking about what you should say to people and what you shouldn't say to people. Yahweh just handed you the needle and went, poof.
And pop that bubble for you. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay.
Okay, couple comments. Just something that came to mind about the way we act around others. We have to be careful the way we hold ourselves, the way that we walk and carry ourselves, because life and death are in the power of the tongue. And if somebody hears us, whether we post it, whether they hear us talking to someone else, we could lead someone astray just by, just by somebody wondering about what, we're all about. If they catch us saying something, whether they hear it, overhear it, or whether we say it to them negatively, they can be led astray by something like that. So,
Okay, I want to be careful of how we take this. Okay, so I don't want you to be so worried about everything, but I don't want you to not be worried about it. But to be so worried about it that somehow what you say may just ruin someone's whole chance at the salvation future and all that
Exactly.
stuff. Look, you can't say enough wrong things to a right person or right things to a wrong person. You could cause them to be sidetracked for a while until Abba grabs a hold of them and gets them back on track. And that's a lot of suffering they could have avoided that you kind of, were a part of causing. So we have to be aware of that. But I don't want you to think that what you do or say, this is almost like that Christian mindset of, if I don't go out there, then all these people won't get saved. No, if Abba wants to bring people into the kingdom, he will. What you could do is cause some damage and harm on the path there, and you don't want to be a part of that.
exactly.
Okay.
We have
So-
to be careful on what we do as Yahweh's people.
Exactly, because you do, but more importantly is you represent him. So it reflects on you, and that's the thing you should be much more concerned about, is that how are you representing him, and how does that look? Don't worry about the other person as much from the point of view as, even if you screwed the whole deal up, Abba can still bring them back into where they need to be. But you're embarrassing him. That's something between you and him that you might have a lot more trouble fixing. Okay? You
And-
understand what I'm saying?
And also, to go along with what Shannon said earlier about trying to find a way, how do you find a way to vent or whatever? Other than venting to people, I journal. And I just write it down, get it out of my mind, and if I want to go back and cross it out, I do later, but it helps a
Sure.
lot. I mean, it's...
Yeah, for everybody, look, let me go back to, real quickly, something I've given you before. Figure out what your problems are, what your issues are, and you need to figure out the workaround that you use. For some people, journaling will work. For some people, a punching bag will work. For some people, just having a friend to vent. Whatever it is, you have to figure out what works for you. There's not one size fits all. Some of you would think like me, I'm so ADD, I couldn't journal. Sit there and actually write things out, there's no way. But I know journaling works great for some people. So listen to the different things, but don't think I have to do that. That's the only thing that works. One of these things will work for you. Try whichever ones you want to try and figure out what works for you. Journaling is a great one for people that can do that. I know people who do it, it really, really helps them. Okay? So I absolutely would encourage you. But if it's not something, don't be thinking, oh, now I can't fix it because I can't journal. Well, no, you can do something else. There are lots of different ways to accomplish the same thing. You just got to figure out which way works for you. Bill?
Thank you, Rabbi. Shalom.
Shalom.
Just a halachic question. James is writing, and sorry, I should have had my place here. But it's about the widows and the orphans.
Yeah.
He says to me, it's an halachic question. I think we're surrounded by needs all around us, and I'm sure our mailboxes are full of people asking us for money and concerns, and there's a million different organizations out there that claim to have the way to take care of everybody's problems, but it seems halakhically, Yahweh wants us to focus on the orphans and the widows.
Okay, so I don't realize that, in the society that was happening then, this was a much bigger problem in terms of the neglect that happens to the widows and orphans. They didn't have the government helping the way they do here and other things. The point here has to do with that to have clean and undefiled religion, you are to visit, so to speak, or be available to people that have a need. that in some area are less fortunate than you are in that area. It doesn't have to be finances. It could be someone that's totally financially fine, but has other social, emotional problems that you can be there for because they need you just to spend time with them, or they need you to affirm them in some way. Okay, they could use a visit or just to go out and have a cup of coffee or whatever it is. So it may not always be a physical need, like we think of the widows and orphans being poor and needing to be physically taken care of that way. But he's saying, look, think about those that are the equivalent of that in your area. Those that don't maybe come all the time because physically it's hard for them to come to the building here on a Shabbat. And so you recognize that they're not here and maybe you can go and visit them. Or those that maybe you notice that they're not as socially interactive, but they certainly, may desire some more of that. Maybe you go over and sit with them because maybe they're not the initiator types that come and sit with you. So you go over and say, hey, would it be okay if I sit with you? And see if maybe they just need someone to sit with them and talk to them. And this is the outwardly being aware of somebody's need is what he's talking about with clean and undefiled religion, okay? So it's not about giving money to an organization and all those other things. If there's people with physical need in the body here, this piece of the body in MTOI and Beth Shalom, we take care of that. People come to us and let us know. Of course, there are people that don't come to us and don't let us know, and so then we don't take care of those things that we're not aware of. But when we are aware of it, we do help them. And of course, we help them by making sure that if they need to learn how to fish, we don't just hand them a bunch of fish. And so we figure out what the problem is so that they can have a long-term, solution. But I think it's more about, let's be much more, I talked about this many, many times, but it's been a while, hyper-vigilantly aware. Let's be much more aware of all the people around us and what they might need. I mean, do you ever just stand up during the oneg when we have our meal afterwards and just sort of look around and see if anybody needs you to come and sit with them? Or maybe it'd be good for you to go over and say hello to somebody you haven't said hello to? Or do you just drift comfortably into your social group that you normally hang out with because that's the most fun for you? I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that at all, but I'm saying, but maybe every now and then you should be wondering, I'm going to spend this Shabbat, I want to go serve a little bit. I'm going to find somebody that needs and can benefit from me sitting with them. And just maybe do that once a month, or do that as often as you decide to do that, because you have your own social needs as well that you'd like to do. But look for those opportunities to get to know other people. I mean, you should recognize after being here, some of you have been here now 3 months, 6 months, 8 months. I mean, it's funny, because instead of saying years, a lot of you are here very short. But you know what? How many people in this room do you know at this point? Have you really made any effort to meet everybody? I mean, that's part of what you can do to help them feel more welcome, is go over and meet people. Have you had them out, socially to go share a meal, or had them to your house, or just gone out and done something together, whatever, so you can get to know each other? There's a lot more we could be doing to express that love in a congregational sort of way. All right, Rob, finish this off with a couple of questions.
Okay, Rabbi. I got one for, in verse 14, it says, when enticed and drawn away with your own desires and trapped. How do we recognize what is our own desires? We have sometimes our strong wants turns into what we think is needs. How do we differentiate that? Because sometimes people are come here, they pack everything up, move here because they see that was what Abba wants. That was Abba's desire. Then they get here and something smacks up hard against, and then they leave. I mean, they're here maybe a week or two, or sometimes maybe one service, and then they leave and go somewhere else because this wasn't really their Abba's desire. Where's that line? Our own desires and Abba's desires. Is it just through counseling or?
Well, I mean, there's going to be a lot of various sort of life experiences that could fit into what you're asking, but you gave a very specific one about people coming here. Look, all of it's going to be as far as his desire, he words it in the book. So we know what he desires. He tells us, he writes it out for us. We have it, in our scriptures, right? When it comes to thinking, well, it was Abba's desire or his will to do certain things, you have to ask, well, what was the result he was looking for? Oh, yeah, well, it was the Father's desire I moved to Tennessee. No, it wasn't. If he wanted you in Tennessee, he wanted you here for something that you needed to be in Tennessee to do or have. He didn't just want you in Tennessee. You understand what I'm saying? So to figure out the desire, you then have to ask, okay, well, he wanted me to be there to go to this congregation. Okay, did he want you to be there for the people, for the teaching, for a combination? I mean, why did he want you here? In other words, if you feel that that's what he wanted, why? What is it that he actually wanted? Did he just want you physically to be here? And so that's the thing that, I often get confused looking at people going, if you were here for what I would have thought were the right reasons, a lot of the reasons people leave would make no sense. Because nothing has happened that would alter those reasons to be here. But it just depends on why they were here, okay? And why they came. And so when you want to, assess the nature of the desire, well, I just feel like it's Abba's desire for me to be in Tennessee, okay? And also maybe your desire to be in Tennessee. Okay, well, that's fine. To accomplish what? What is the result? Be a result questioner. In other words, always ask, what is the result that we're looking for? What am I hoping to achieve out of this action that I'm going to take? Okay, what am I looking for as a result? Well, we just don't have any place for our children to interact with other children, and so that are in a Torah observant way, so we want to come here. Well, that's definitely available here. We've got lots of children. But then you have to decide, okay, was that the most important? Well, what about the teaching part? Because see, when you have a challenge is when the hierarchy of which was more important. Well, but I didn't like what you said. Okay, but liking what I said, was that the reason you were here, or was it the children? Okay? Or is liking what I said the reason you're here? And then, in other words, figure out why you're here. And then if any other element, because there's so many elements in a group setting. Okay, how you interact with the other members, how your children interact with people, or if you're single, how other singles interact with you, the teaching aspect of it, the counseling aspect of it. And you have to ask, if I don't like any one of those 6 or 7 or 8 elements, which ones are deal breakers and which ones shouldn't be? And I'm not the one to decide that. You get to decide for yourself what's a deal breaker and what's not. But you have to know why you're making your decisions. And if it's just I want to be there, that's not going to be very strong in holding you together. I want to be there, there's nothing wrong with that. But why? Okay, if you counsel with me, you're going to have a hard time at times or realize I'm going to ask a lot of why questions. Well, blah, blah, blah. I say, okay, well, why does that bother you? Or why do you want that? Or why are you frustrated? Well, I don't know, but well, then and we'll dig until we get to the why. Because everything is about the reason, and the reason is the why. Well, I want to be there. Why? I don't know, I just want to be there. I just feel led. Be careful having lead poisoning, okay? Well, I just feel led, All right, Rob?
Okay, from Pete and Brenda Lamb, says, can we take James 1, verses 2 and 3, and James 1:12 to mean that we are put through trials to reveal things about our strengths and weaknesses in our faith?
Yes.
Okay. From Leanne, is the quote-unquote quick to wrath of James 1:19 what we call triggered today? And is despising sin the same as allowing wrath or anger to rest in our hearts?
Okay, part 1 is yes. I mean, triggered is sort of that quick to wrath thing, so yes. The second part, read that again.
It says, is despising sin, and she gave an example of Ecclesiastes 7:9, the same as allowing wrath or anger to rest in our hearts?
Ecclesiastes what, 7:9?
7 verse 9.
Yeah, it says, do not be hasty in your spirit to be vexed, for vexation rests in the bosom of fools. Look, these things, these negative emotions are always going to be terribly challenging filters for you to see reality correctly. Okay, to see your role in your relationship with Yahweh correctly, your role with other people correctly. Negative emotions are always going to very much cause a filtering that's going to make it hard for you to live in reality. So, so let's be understanding that aspect of it. Okay?
Okay, from Pete and Brenda Lamb, is a bad review on Yelp considered Lashon Hara?
Is a what? A bad review on Yelp.
Yelp.
Look, if somebody's putting in a review site, a negative review for you, and it's accurate, because people do want to know if there's a negative review for anything, that's one thing. If it's just somebody that's just venting because they got mad about something and they just want to hurt you, that's definitely Lashon Hara, okay? But the thing is, it's not Lashon Hara unless it's something scripturally, it's a covenantal relationship thing. People out there behave in all kinds of aberrant, undesirable ways. If they're not covenanted, it doesn't work out to be something we start pointing covenantal labels on. Lashon Hara is a covenantal label. Let's you do evil speak. It's only evil speech if you know what evil is. Okay? So if you're not in covenant, it's wrong, undesirable. It's not necessarily evil from the point of view of Lashon Hara. Okay? So you just had to throw that one in there because you thought it was funny. Okay, anything else before we end?
Yeah, just the last one here, quick. Charles and Tiffany Byans. My wife and I usually only vent to each other because friends are hard to come by. But the problem is, who do we vent to if we need to vent about each other?
Billy. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm his boss, I would think I was going to pay for that. But no, look, you can if you have to vent, if you're dealing with spousal problems and stuff, it's not so much venting. You need counsel. Okay, if you got something that you can't seem to work out with your spouse, then call for counsel. In which case, you will call Billy, and he'll schedule something with me or with him, and that's fine. But you have to find a friend. I mean, if your friends are hard to come find, maybe you got to figure out why you don't have a friend to vent to, okay? I've got a friend, ask him. I vent to him all the time. And he vents to me, and that's what you have to have that outlet. Of course, like I said, but you don't need to have 7 of them. 1 is enough, and you only need to vent to only 1. Okay, was that the last one? All right, are the children here?